Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? A friend, a sibling, a parent? How about a spouse? Infidelity is a huge issue in marriage. According to research studies, 20 to 30% of married men will cheat on their wives, and 15 to 20% of all married women will cheat on their husbands. Stop and let those numbers sink in. Nearly half of all marriages will be impacted by infidelity. But can you imagine making a commitment to your spouse with the full certainty that they would betray you? This is exactly the task to which God commissioned the prophet Hosea. Similar to Jonah, Amos, Micah, and Isaiah, Hosea ministered in the 8th century BC. This was a time for spiritual and social decline in Israel, about a decade prior to the fall of the northern kingdom in 722 BC. Through both his life and his message, Hosea was commissioned to confront Israel's spiritual adultery, alternating between caution of God's imminent judgment and comfort of his future restoration, concluding with a final call for repentance. This lecture will focus on Hosea's life in chapters 1 through 3. Our second lecture will focus on his message in chapters 4 to 14. The structure of Hosea's message is difficult. For our purposes, we will focus on the prophet's parallel panels, alternating between the themes of judgment and restoration. In the initial verses in chapter 1, God commissions Hosea to marry a woman and take children linked to promiscuity. The ambiguity of the phrase wife or children of whoredom has given rise to much speculation. Based on the details given and the analogy to Israel, it seems likely that Gomer was sexually involved with other men prior to and after her marriage to Hosea. For example, in chapter 2, verse 5, it speaks about her receiving payment for her services. Also, since only the first child which Gomer bore is explicitly connected to the prophet, scholars debate whether the other children were fathered by Hosea as well. It's difficult to be certain. Nonetheless, God uses Hosea's family, his wife and children, to picture his relationship with Israel. Just as Gomer was physically unfaithful to Hosea, Israel has been spiritually unfaithful to God. Using the names of Hosea's children, God declares inescapable judgment. Their firstborn, Jezreel. Just as Jehu repaid Israel's royal house in the Jezreel Valley for their idolatry, which you can read about in 2 Kings 9 and 10, and God's commendation in chapter 15, God promises to repeat this bloody judgment on the northern kingdom for their infidelity. Their daughter, Lo-ruhamah, God would no longer show mercy or forgive Israel. Their final child, Lo-ami, not my people. Israel had broken God's covenant, and their relationship with God was broken. No longer would he say, I will be your God, and you will be my people. Without any transition, the prophet abruptly moves from near to far, from judgment to restoration. With clear allusions to the Abrahamic covenant, God's promise of innumerable descendants will be realized, completely reversing the previous judgment. No longer will Jezreel be a place of judgment, but in the future, Israel will be planted and flourish in their homeland. And Israel's covenant relationship with God, it will be restored. They will again be children of the living God, receiving his abundant mercies. In chapter 2, Hosea again abruptly shifts back to caution of coming judgment with a plea to his unfaithful wife. Here the symbol, Hosea's relationship with Gomer, and its referent, God's relationship with Israel, are difficult to distinguish. Like the nation's relationship with God, Hosea's marriage is broken. He appeals to his children to plead with their mother to turn away from her adulterous lifestyle. He threatens to inflict punishment on his wayward wife, taking away her provision, her food, her clothing, and exposing her nakedness and shame. She has attributed his agricultural blessings, the grain and new wine, as wages from her lover. In light of the later mention of Baal in chapter 2 and the frequent link between agricultural and Baal worship, it seems likely that God is here condemning Israel's idolatry. But God does not delight in bringing judgment against his people. The central focus of this section is on his intent for the judgment, to bring repentance. Verse 7, then she shall say, I will go and return to my husband, for it was better for me then than now. God then reveals, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness. Many versions place a heading prior to this verse, signaling a shift from judgment to restoration. But I think such headings obscure the tension in the mind and heart of the original audience. The Hebrew term translated allure often involves seduction, and the desert is a symbol of danger and chaos. So right on the heels of God's threat of judgment, Hosea's audience would likely have wondered whether God would draw them into the desert to judge them or bless them. Yet his prophet reveals a reversal. God will turn from correction to care, speaking tenderly to his people. As we briefly mentioned in our introductory lecture, God plays on a Hebrew place name to highlight this transformation. Speaking about their future restoration, he says, I will make the valley of Achor a doorway of hope. Achor means trouble, and this valley was named for the sin of Achan. It's the site where the people stoned Achan and burned all of his possessions. But what was a symbol of sin and judgment will be turned into a symbol of hope. God will again betroth Israel to himself, restoring their covenant relationship and reversing his covenant curses. Israel will be changed from unfaithful to faithful. He continues the theme of restoration in chapter 3. God commands Hosea, go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress. Hosea is commanded to love one who has been and is currently living in infidelity. Can you imagine? But again, Hosea pictures God's love for his people, even in the midst of their sin. Hosea woos and purchases Gomer back at great cost, great financial cost, great emotional cost, but also with great expectation, an expectation of purity and repentance. In the same way, God will redeem his people at great cost to himself, but with expectation of repentance. Let's review. Vividly pictured in Hosea's marriage and family, God's prophet confronts Israel's spiritual adultery, alternating between caution of God's coming judgment and comfort of his future restoration. With repeated calls to repentance, God desires his people to turn back to covenant obedience. In our next lecture, we'll look at Hosea's message to God's people.